Okay, we'll call the meeting to order.
Your Worship. First item of minutes of the Council and Committee meeting held Wednesday, June 19th. The recommendation is that the committee approve those minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Favor, opposed, carried.
Item 2 are minutes of the Council and Committee meeting held Monday, June 24th. The recommendation is that the committee approve those minutes.
Second.
Favor, opposed, carried. We'll pause for any additional items to add to the agenda. Is there any?
Yes, I have one. I just got back.
Okay, May
Saw
wants to
the
talk,
above all
show
signs.
vacation photos.
Not a whole.
No. Go ahead.
The above all signs.
Above all signs, okay. Okay, anything else? Seeing none. Madam Clerk.
Item 3 is a delegation from Mr. Khalaj, owner of the property at 1001 Delestre Avenue. And we just ask Mr. Khalaj to come to the table.
Hi everyone, and just wanted to explain this project that we are working on it since September 2012. We purchased this lot on 1001 Delestre Avenue, which is beside the Nelson Creek. There's an existing house there, approximately about 50-something years old, and we plan to tear it down and build a house for our family. So we approached the city before purchasing this property, and then we get an environmental department to advise us what we need to do about this, and they gave us some information, and they were positive about building a new house in this lot on the same footprint. They say if you wanted to extend it toward the creek, you have to hire the environmental consultant to deal with it, which we were going to do with that, but unfortunately we ended up to get the designer to design based on the same footprint of the house, which is very small. But there is one detached garage and then one main dwelling. We want to connect these two together, which right now is connected by a wooden deck. The house is not livable and not renovatable based on our desires. So we hired the consultant, which is Envirotech, one of the famous companies. And back and forth with them and then spending a lot of money, and we ended up to submit our plan to the Department of Fisheries and Ocean. So we ended up getting the approval of our plan by Fisheries. And they said, your plan will not affect any thing on that environmental thing on the fish habitat and anything on that raw area. So we submit our plan. We ended up hiring a geotech because we are applying for basically two variances. The existing house has a variance on the Libelou side, which is west side, on a 6-foot setback. The usual setback is more than that. But the existing house is sitting on a 6-foot setback from the property line. And also the front of the house, same thing. We designed the house based on conforming at the front, pushing the house back to the north, and then we submit our plan. And the planning department didn't like it. They said, you are going closer to the slope and top of the bank. We would like you to stick with the same footprint. We agreed with that, and then we pushed the house back anytime back and forth. It took about like 4 or 5 weeks to get response from the planning department. Even the first application that we put on planning, it took them 4 weeks to just let us know that the survey is not readable, is not clear. 4 weeks for just saying that your survey is not clear. Anyways, right now we are at the process that our plan is meeting all the bylaws except the setback, which from the Libelou side, which is on the existing setback, and on the slope side. Basically, we are building on the same footprint. But planning department are pushing us to, are dictating us to change the plan to the coach house plan, which we don't like it. We don't want a coach house in the area. But right now, Mr. Michael Dollywall is on holiday. What we based on, he said you can go to the council meeting without having our favor or our positive feedback on your plan. I said, no, I respect your professional opinion about it, and I would like you to have a positive feedback on it. So we ended up to change the Libelou side, a little bit more money we have to spend to the designer and also to the building the house. Based on what they said, we have to set back 2 feet, 10 by 2 feet on a Libelou side in one portion of the house to show a breakage on the wall, in the solid wall. Despite of we are meeting all the height and perimeter height, wall height area on that location, which is under the bylaw. The calculation is everything is our plan, and probably you have a copy of it. So, but we have a new plan that we show. We had to break 2 portions on the roof line and make it 2 small, tiny balconies, which is extra work and extra money to just see if they like it or not. But I haven't got the feedback from the Mr. Dhaliwal yet because he's on holiday. We emailed the plan a couple of days ago, and then probably he comes back on Wednesday. I'm just here to show my frustration at why this thing takes this long, and then we are following all the rules and everything.
Okay, you mentioned some 2 balconies on the roof.
On the second floor, I have the new version. If you want to have a look at it, I just got it today. I can just pass it around and you can have a look at it.
You got that from whom?
From Ted Design.
Your designer.
Yeah.
Your designer.
The designer did the change, the revision. If you want, you can have a look at it.
Do you have enough copies?
Sure. Not for everybody, unfortunately, but
Okay, we'll share.
and
Okay, well, once I've seen that, I'll ask my questions. But Councillor Reid.
Well, I'd like to see the new one too, but, so, I guess a couple of questions. I believe you and I spoke.
exactly, yeah. Because I'm sorry, just to interrupt. A few weeks back, I just really got frustrated, and I started emailing and phoning some councillors to get some advice. I said, well, what is wrong in this between? I'm doing something wrong, or something is dispute? Let me know. I just want to work with you guys and get this approved. That's it. That's why I called a couple of
No,
councillors.
and that's fine. That's what we're here for. So, I in turn listened and figured out you've spent about $17,000
Pretty
since
much, yeah.
September. And the timing is just
And
way,
what gets-
way off the wall. But I did speak to Mr. McIntyre about this. And he was looking into it, I believe, so perhaps we can hear from him. But my specific questions are, we're rebuilding on the same footprint. Was the original footprint then no longer up to our current bylaws? Like, was it non-conforming to our current bylaws?
Your Worship, that's my understanding. But also, Raul Aloué was here today. He's Manager of Development Services.
Okay.
He was working more directly. Michael is one of his staffers on the application. When it came to my attention, I spoke with staff. I got the background on it. I called Mr. Khalaj and we talked about different options. And I asked staff to go back and re-review the proposal. And our understanding was there was a new submission coming in. So, and again, Raul would have to confirm whether we've received that new submission or not.
So maybe Raul can come up and talk to us then. I guess my concern on this is the time it's taken and the process that sort of got back. Well, come on, Raul, I'm just waiting for you. Is the process that got, sort of backlogged? If we knew so there's no fisheries. So I'll go back to square one. There's no fisheries issues then, and are there any riparian area setbacks?
Your Worship, it didn't start as no fisheries issues. There are fisheries issues. Number one, this is a site that's quite complicated. It is an existing house with an existing garage. There is no foundation to the house and the garage right now, so it is a new foundation.
Okay. And
There
that
are-
creates a problem
there
because
is. Yes,
fisheries?
It requires a review both because of fisheries and it requires a review for geotechnical as well.
Okay.
So there's a significant slope in this area, so it's a complicated lot.
Okay.
It's got riparian issues, which the applicant has had to review, and that's something that's part and parcel of any site that has a slope.
Yeah.
There's variance issues. The site has a limited building envelope because a large part of the site is under a restriction because of the slope under the zoning bylaw. So the site has a restricted building envelope from the outset. The applicant is trying to maximize the building envelope, and as many do, and that requires a review, both in terms of how big that building should be, the character that results out of that variance. So there's 2 variances. One is setbacks, the other is the slope itself, and building into that slope. So we're still reviewing that. There's been some multiple submissions with the applicant. I'm not versed entirely. Michael Dollywall is not on holidays. He's on a conference today and tomorrow, but he has been around. And it's just one of those complicated lots. It has a ravine on one side. It has an older building. You know, our riparian regulations do require reconsideration of that. And the applicant has met with fisheries, and there is an authorization by fisheries on the fisheries component alone.
Okay.
That allows a certain amount of additional encroachment into the SPIA area.
Yeah.
But we're still in the review of whether that's an appropriate design for the building, given the size of the existing building envelope, and whether a development variance permit should be recommended on the site based on the design of the site. And that's, we're through that review, and we do that review routinely.
Did we go about this a bit backwards? That was my concern. It seems to me that...
Not to my knowledge. I can't speak step by step. I'm not the file manager. I have spoken to Michael Dollywall, and but often there's some iterations of the project. There's complications around how far a building could be expanded, depending on, and it's not uncommon that you go back and forth with an applicant to find the sweet spot. Okay.
Okay.
So that's
So sweet spot being that if we're building on the same foundation of the house.
No. Well, there's an expansion.
Not the same
Right now, there's no foundation between the garage and the building, so it's a new foundation. It's taking.
But just between that.
Yeah, but currently there's two buildings, so they're looking to fill in that entire building envelope.
Gotcha.
So there is a new foundation on that component, so it requires a reconsideration, a review through the SPIA process, the
Okay.
fisheries process, and as well as the technical process, and that's the process we've been going back and forth. I'm hopeful that at some point we'll reach a place where we've got a happy medium, and until that process is exhausted, and we try to do that as quickly as possible. Certainly I'm not aware of the delays experienced by the gentleman here, but I'll certainly look into it. But we're looking for the new design and see whether we're close.
Okay, now he doesn't want a coach house, and he doesn't have to have one. That's his choice, his land.
No, that's correct. The suggestion was that that would keep the massing, and that might be one opportunity to achieve livable space within a different configuration. We're always looking to, provide options for applicants.
And are we just doing the massing to conform to what's there now, or what possibly could be there? Because if they're all 50-year-old houses, they're, just to mass to what's there now, that may not be there for a long time.
Right.
So.
We're not necessarily tied to an existing massing scheme that matches what's there now. However, we always like to look at lots in terms of their available building envelope as they exist. And that's really what we use as the baseline for applicants coming in and what they ought to understand the site should be developed with. We try to maximize that potential. We do bring forward development.
And you do a good job, and we're all proud of you. The concern I have if it's a massing problem is it just blows my mind, because when I look in an old Coquitlam neighborhood and I see a 10,000 square foot house sitting in amongst a whole bunch of little bunks, that's where massing just doesn't work. Mr. McIntyre wanted to say something, Your Worship.
Okay. I should be skipped a bill. A couple comments if I could. It concerns me too, and I hear an observation it's taken 4 weeks for staff to get back. So we will check into that, and I'll report back to council if that's not appropriate either.
Thank you very much.
But as Raul said, often there are iterations going back and forth. The other comment too is when I spoke with Mr. Khalaj by phone a couple of weeks ago, and he was very frustrated, and I can understand that. And I said, well, sir, if this is the design that you're insisting on, you want to bring this forward, we can certainly do that. We're not holding you back from getting to council. Staff may not be in support, but that's always your opportunity to go forward to council.
No, and I'm glad we've got to hear about it and the SPIA and that, and I mean, I think the applicant's done a lot of work going to, I just thought it was sort of backwards. I sort of thought we should have got the design settled first before he went to the fisheries. But anyhow, thank you.
Okay. And the reason I wanted to look, this one, you said it has 2 decks up on the second floor.
The second floor, 2 tiny decks that shows on the breakage on the roof line. Michael, he said he was better to just set back some part of the building right above the garage. And
those, okay.
Yeah, it's 2 tiny,
I see them.
just
Okay.
little balconies, which honestly, structural-wise, let me tell you the truth, I don't like it because balcony over the living space, it may leak. It will leak for sure. Not the next first 5 years, but in 10, 15 years, it will leak. Need a lot of maintenance, but if you have to do it, we do it, no problem.
Okay, I'm surprised to hear that because my house is 25 years old and we have balconies over the living space, so I better get home. But we do have my challenge here, and it's a challenging site. I actually used to spend time in that ravine when I was a boy. It's right up against the property line. Normally we would have a 12-foot, I won't go metric, I'll go imperial. There'd be a 12-foot setback on the side yard, and there's only a 5.5 or 6-foot setback. So we're already trying to break the rules in order to make it fit. And so I've got some challenges related to the massing too. I think that we ended up with a 2-unit house, a house with a suite, with 2-car garage instead of 1-car garage. And so I think we end up with double the house on a site that barely fit the original house. And so I think, I applaud staff for working on trying to find some solutions. I'm not sure about the decks myself, but do you now have the fisheries issues worked out, or
Yeah, it's been solved, and
that's all
yeah.
that's all resolved?
The fishery problem is on the east side of the property. Now the problem right now is on the west side of the property. Just the massing look of the building is the issue with the planning department, which we end up with this design. Yeah,
partly because we moved it closer to the street than any others.
No, actually, exactly is in the same location as it
No, I know, but no other houses on that street will be allowed to be as close to the street because we've cut your setback in half.
Yeah, that's right. The only one house is on at the street. If you are looking at it, just one house next to it. There's 2 houses only under the street. That's it. And on the other one already has the 6-foot setback.
The other one,
Right north side of it.
yeah, and it's just a little 1-story building.
It's one story showing on one side and the 2-story on the slope
A
side.
bigger house looks even bigger if you make the setback shorter. And so that's, I think, what staff are probably challenged with is how much closer to the street this will be than all the other houses. And there are 24 houses on the Blue all the way down to Burnett. And none of them are great big, but that would mean that pretty much the biggest house on the Blue would also be the closest to the street. And so I can understand the challenges that staff are facing.
I understand that too.
Trying to get through that.
But as far as I know, the setback that we designed the house is the same setback as the next door.
The next door?
Yeah, the house right beside our house.
Across the river?
No, not across the river. Right, there's 2 houses on Libelou, on north part of Delestre Avenue.
The other one,
There's only 2.
the
The brown one, the lower
one story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Small 1-story.
No, and that's what we're saying is that once you get to 2.5 stories, it's a bigger.
But, Mr. Mayor, it doesn't show 2.5 story on the Libelou side. If you look at the
You see the basement
second
windows
floor,
and the
the
main
second
floor.
floor is all under the roof and all the attic trusses. It's not you see the roof only.
Okay, I'm looking at from grade to the underside of the second story soffit is about 24 feet.
That's right.
2.5 stories. So I'm not trying to argue. I'm just trying to say that's what
it is,
staff is
exactly.
challenged with.
That's right. I agree with that too.
That, if you put 24 feet of wall 6 feet from the property line instead of 12 feet where it normally is, then it has a different look since that's the street side property. And I won't go any further because there's a couple other councillors that want to speak. Councillor O'Neill and Councillor Asmussen.
Yes, thank you. Let me see that. And so, if I understand it, you've just come up with this design today.
Exactly.
Recently, has staff
Just we worked on it on the weekend and
hasn't even seen this yet? So you
No.
don't know staff's response to this yet?
no, but we did the change exactly. We rough sketch it. I showed to Michael last week, and he said it's okay. We like it, and go for the final.
Okay, so I
drawing.
just want to understand the process here. So you've been going back and forth with staff, and
That's
working with them, and have developed this in response to staff.
This is the last one, yes.
So before you've heard staff's response to this, you've come to council.
No. We got the verbal approval from Michael about the changes that we made on the plan, and he said, it's okay, just do it. And I mentioned him that, Michael, I'm going to go to the delegation meeting and explain this as well before you
So,
see it.
so it may well be that this is going to go through. Staff might say this is fine, and so what are we talking about here then?
Just
That you don't want to do this?
No, I want to do this. No,
What are we talking about here?
I don't know. I just explained what we
So
we
why are
went
you
through.
here? What do you ask? What are you looking for from us?
Just looking to explain the project and say,
Wants to build.
want to build a house. That's
Well, that's what the staff is here for, and they've been working with you, and they like this. And if for some reason they decide that there's a problem with this, is there not a board of variance that then you could go to asking for a variance? That's part of the process as
it.
well.
We applied for the Board of Variance, yes. We applied, yes.
Once your turn, okay, so but if you get this, you don't have to go to the Board of Variance. Everything will be approved. If staff approves this, You won't have to go to the Board of Variance. Everything will be fine.
But already paid for the $1,500 to go to the Board of Variance.
Does the Board of Variance approve?
I think you mean a development variance permit.
Okay.
Did you actually go to the Board of Variance?
No,
It's a
no,
separate
no.
process.
Yeah.
We're talking
Well,
about
I
this.
explained my situation. They said you have to pay $1,500. I don't know which one is that.
All right, so okay, just to recap this. You've been negotiating, and it's taken a long time, and I appreciate your patience with that, and it's obviously a difficult lot. You go back and forth with staff. They're trying to get the best solution for you and for the neighborhood and for our standards. We think you've come up with a great solution, which is this, that staff can live with, you can live with it. And if for some reason it falls apart, there is another process that's actually in place. It's called the Board of Variance. It's a separate entity of people who the city has appointed to actually act as a little court to hear your complaint. If something goes wrong here, you can go there and persuade them about the situation. If not, if they can rule in favor of your request, or if they rule against your request, then that comes to council, and you want to appeal that, it comes to council, correct?
Of course, there are limits to the mandate. I'll get
Jim,
Mr. McIntyre to explain the
Okay,
limits
sure.
to the mandate and that kind of stuff.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just to be clear, what's been applied for is a development variance permit. And so that's an application that's reviewed by staff, and ultimately we bring that forward to council with a recommendation either to support it or not to support it. And so with the development variance permit, it's council is the ultimate decision maker. And I think in the past there has been a little bit of sensitivity at council about some of these applications that maybe are trying to avoid council and go through the Board of Variance. And there needs to be cases of hardship and such. So I'm not sure whether this particular lot, it would seem on the surface it would likely be subject to a Board of Variance application, but for whatever reason, the applicant's chosen to go through the development variance permit process. So the next stage, to answer the questions, is we'll work with the applicant on this latest submission, do the review, and then bring that forward to council. There has to be a notification, because a DVP, in effect, is kind of like a mini public hearing, so there has to be notice provided.
Yes.
And it would come forward to council for council to decide on the application.
Okay, so he's applied for that, and if he's right in saying that staff approves this, then that would come to council as a development permit application that we would discuss at that stage. Okay.
That's right.
All right.
It could come to council whether, it's not for staff to approve it, it's for staff to support it.
Support it, right, yes.
And an applicant always has that option. They say, look, we're frustrated or tired of dealing with staff. We want to bring it forward with your support or not, and then it's council's the ultimate
I
decision.
understand. Okay, one last question. So at that time, then you've got another opportunity to speak at the formal process. This is an informal information thing, but when it comes to us, you have another opportunity, and members of the public will have an opportunity to speak as well to us. So this is kind of inserting your point of view into the council's proceedings a little prematurely, actually, from my point of view. It's interesting to know about, but this is going to come before us again, and I would think that if every person who's in long negotiations with council comes to council in the middle of those, or with staff about something, comes to council with their insight, it could slow things down even more. But you've got the right to do it, and this reminds me actually of a lot we were talking about. I think it was on Burke Mountain. It was very close to stream, and the house had to be right up against a road somewhere last
Just
year,
part of the subdivision.
about a year ago. And so it was a difficult thing, and we spent a lot of time on it. Thank you. I understand what we're doing now. Appreciate it. Thank you. That's all.
Councillor Rasmussen.
Well, thank you. We spoke on the phone, and at that time, one of your issues was not wanting to do the articulation, and that's what I explained. Within Millardville, where we have design guidelines, we have a certain character that we want. And so even more so in Millardville, we're concerned about designs. And I'm glad to see that you've now taken staff's advice, because that was the big issue on that one. And about the coach house, that was never, as we talked, forced upon you. That was an option. And the issue about the coach house was that to control massing or large buildings, we have a perimeter wall height rule within and you had to lower your house to allow a coach house for that perimeter wall height. If you hadn't sunk it into the ground, you wouldn't have been able to do a coach house because the perimeter wall height would have excluded you from the coach house. So, as I said at that time, coach house was an option
That's right.
for you, not being dictated to you. Staff doesn't dictate, they just provide options to you on that one.
Maybe that was my feeling. Sorry about that.
But yeah, they just provide options. The one thing I do want staff, when they come back about this and the timing of this, I'd also like them to, a lot of times staff gets blamed at delaying things, but a lot of times, when did we receive the application to review? Sometimes your guys won't tell you, but they don't send it in 2-3 weeks, and they only get it like a week prior, and they're saying it's been 4 weeks, and they only got it a week ago. So I think staff needs to, when they look at this, look at when they, from your consultants, received their application, just to be fair on both sides for the timing. I think staff works very hard at trying to get applications out, but they have to fit them into the schedule of parameter. The one thing I do have a question on your design. So you're going for a coach house with suite. Are you looking at, when I look at this design on the proposed basement, there's a door that, are you proposing a suite in the bottom of this building? So,
I think there's nothing wrong with that. We can, I think we are allowed to have a legal suite, a 2-bedroom legal suite under in the basement.
so you're allowed to, plus the coach house?
Not plus, no.
Well, it's just
Not plus. This coach house design is out of question.
Staff were pushing him away from the
I'm
three-story
just-
building into a coach house option.
Well, they weren't, I'm just saying, depending on what we're doing here, just clarifying. But I think this, once again, this was your own issue, right? And I think now you have to just
We
work through
took your
staff.
advice and we did some changes there.
And I think that was the biggest issue, the articulation. It's in their report, is that, you know, you're in an area that requires variances. You're in an area that requires, with that perimeter wall, as the mayor said, 24 feet, we need some articulation, especially being so close to the street, especially beside a main road there, to create that character look to the neighborhood. That's what staff is trying to achieve, is that fit and form and character of the neighborhood.
Okay, councilor support.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to know why you're forcing balconies on this house. For what reason?
Your Worship, I don't think we were forcing balconies. I think as articulated by 2 council members already. Staff's position is that when you're putting a larger building closer to the property line, we're looking for the building to be articulated because it's violating typical setbacks of a normal house. The articulation can be achieved in a variety of ways. Some designers move walls back, some use different roof forms, some use balconies. We're not mandating balconies. We are asking that if you're going to bring the building to that line that is half the distance that it should be, and it's currently a small building, then we'd like the building articulated. That's the position. But we don't mandate a specific solution. We just simply have the designer find options that would address the issue.
Just want to add to this, and when I heard from Michael that we need to do some setbacks, the second floor is only 25 feet. It's already a narrow house. But said, okay, Michael, what is the minimum that we can set back? He said 10 by 2 feet is the minimum you can articulate based on the designer desire to just put it in some point that does not hurt the design too much. And we did that, and then he said, I brought it back and said, no, we have to see the roof line, a breakage in the roof line as well. And then I went back to the designer, and he came up with the idea of if we put 2 attic spaces, we turn it to a balcony, it will change it will break the 2 portion of the roof line by about one portion is like about 8 feet and one is about 7 foot, and it will give breakage on the mass of the building, which Michael agreed with that, and then he liked it.
Okay, what size of house do you want to build?
I think that the total of this house will be around maybe 3,600 under that, which is typical in that neighborhood. And
Okay, now the timing, you seem to think it took a long time. Okay, when did you put the application in to begin with?
the house is capped off on October 15, 2012.
2011.
2012.
When did the application go in?
The application for the variances, it went back a couple of...
No, I'm asking you a question. When did you put the application in for this house?
For the new building?
Yeah.
The first application, you can look at the file, went to the environmental department, which goes back to before October.
October 2012.
Mr. Travel, you got the file there?
Yeah,
Why don't we do that?
The DVP was submitted on March 12, 2013. But there was before,
It was exactly.
the owner wanted to do some early works, which he was advised to do because it's a challenging property. So he did a number of things in advance. We allowed that gentleman to go through a review process with some of our asset areas, like environmental, to do some preliminary review and whether the site is buildable, et cetera, et cetera. But the actual DVP came in March.
Yeah, exactly right.
Well, you know, to me, it seems like it's a long, long time for this thing to move on. You know, if it's 2011, if the gentleman is saying to begin with.
No, 12.
No.
2012. That's a long time.
But we didn't have an application until 3.5 months ago. We had an application in March
But even 3.5 months, you know, for a house, come on.
for a development variance permit.
It's not a building permit, if I can, it's not a building permit application that took 3.5 months. It's a development variance application that was submitted in mid-March. Now, I'm not defending the process. I mean, I do respect the gentleman's position, and we will go back and look at materials that were submitted, response by the city, response by the applicant, and his design. We'll go back and check all that information. But it wasn't a building permit that was submitted. It was a development variance permit application that had a number of complicated pieces to it, including the geotechnical requirements, fisheries slope requirements, design requirements around the building. Those are three components that typically, in one application, are challenging, you know, to do a 2-month process, for instance. But when you have all three of them, it does complicate the matter. So I will go back and check the schedule of material submission and response just to make sure, and we'll provide that to council separately, so we can have an idea of what occurred on this case.
Yeah, I've had calls similar to this gentleman, that the process in the planning department is taking a long time. I thought we had to streamline the planning department and expedite a lot of things, but it seems that it's gone way backwards again, to slow up. And then, you know, I mean, it takes an awful long time. That's really, I tell you, something's happening to where it's not moving along as good as it should be. Okay, and that's my opinion. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councilor Nicholson.
I wasn't even sure I was going to speak, Judge. I think I understand.
You looked curious.
Yes, we all are. I think I appreciate how it is that you're here today and at the same time producing drawings that we all hope will bring this to a happy solution. And I think it's a matter of working as fast as you can. So I think what's happened here is that you booked yourself to appear to talk to us at a time when you were a little more frustrated than you are today.
No, the only thing that's I talked to a couple of the councilors and also the mayor. Said, and you can ask the planning department too. I asked them, you know what? I want your positive feedback. I want to get your advice and design. At the end, the result would be just let us to build the house. That's it. If the little change here and there take places, no problem. We'll do it. We are positive for any opinion from your side, and then we work on it. But don't forget on the other part, every changes, every time, every day on that delay on this plan is money that's going out of our pocket. The designer don't work for free. Every time you go back for any changes, they charge you hourly. And then environmental, same thing. Geotech, same thing. I know I have to go through this process and get the consultant a second opinion from this. I did that, but the time that right now we are paying mortgage on this house, that unfortunately we were hoping to rent it. The first 2 weeks, they broke into it and caught all the copper pipes, and then we ended up to just boarding the house. The neighbors are complaining right now. Some of the neighbors are my friend, and they see me every few days and say, what's going on? This is squatters comes in, druggies comes in, and we don't want this thing happening in our neighborhood. What should I answer that?
Okay,
Thank you. Well, we certainly value your coming in here this afternoon. I think this is an incredibly complicated site, and I think you recognize that.
Yeah.
I hope that the experience from this point forward will be smooth. I suspect that you'll be submitting a building permit application soon enough, sometime this fall, and we'll get you started. I suspect first the development variance permit and such. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks for everybody. Thank you.
While I'm away.
And this isn't
This one.
So no report changes. It'll take some time.
Oh,
Okay,
Just wanted to be
next item.
Item 4 is report of General Manager Planning and Development related to the Partington Creek Servicing and Civic Facilities Assessment. The recommendation is that the committee receive the report for information.
So moved.
Second.
Councillor Askinson, second by Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Reid.
so this is like a companion document, I'm assuming.
That's right.
So companions are nice, but they have in them something I'm not in love with. And one of the things, I don't see it here, but I'm looking at the transportation system with the arterial and collectors, and I am one of the people, and I will say it now, because when I'm not here, and it all goes up in smoke, you'll know, but I really believe that Coast Meridian should be developed as 4 lanes from the very top. And I think it's very foolish of us not to do that. And it really is mentioned in here, but it's silent on it as well. Do you know what I mean? It infers that it won't be, but I believe, as it discusses roads and systems, I just wanted to bring that up now. And I also believe, and although you've checked this too, is that the figures that we're using as to population, I really think they're low, because I would ask any of you to go up right now and look at a townhouse and find 2.8 people in it. Well, 0.8 of a person is kind of hard to find anyhow, but most of the townhouses are going to have more than that. And most of the houses up there have been built with suites, so for a single family at 3.2, I just think we're missing the boat on that. And I know you've said, oh, you checked with some guru, but I think the guru's drinking the wrong Kool-Aid, because I really think it's a really low assessment. That's the only comment.
Mr.
I have.
McIntyre.
Thank you, Worship. With regards to the Coast Meridian, like, in the servicing, this is for Partington Creek.
I understand.
And it's a bit of a roadmap for
But it discusses arterials and collectors, and I'm just making the
Okay.
point.
Okay.
Exactly. Obviously, Partington Creek is not an island itself, it's a wider context. My understanding is that engineering is currently doing some consultation around the Coast Meridian project, and Catherine's here and Bill's here, they can probably better speak to it. And so that's a separate track. I'll be coming back to council
Understood.
on that one. The population per household mail that calls, because we did look seriously at it, and I think the situation may be, yes, in some households, and you drive around up there, you sure see a lot of young families and kids, and so that's
And
really
they don't
encouraging.
stop at 0.8.
But I think also in other households, in
They go
townhouses, you
all
might
the
have
way.
just a single or a couple too, so it comes down south.
Yeah, the 2.8 number comes from the 2006 census, and the 2011 census showed 2.9 persons per household for townhouses citywide, and in the Northeast showed 2.6. So we're using 2.8, and I did a sensitivity analysis. For every 0.1 decimal you add, like the 2.9 or 3, you add about 300 to 600 persons to the population. But we also have that range of 10,000 to 15,000 potential residents. So we do have that cushion. So I took a further look at
Well,
that.
that's good. I would love to take you up to Mosaic, and we could knock on every door and find out how many 2.6s we get. I don't think very many. Thank you.
Councillor O'Neill.
Yeah, so on Councillor Reid's original point, how many east-west streets will connect from Partington Creek directly to Coast Meridian? David for sure, Gislason, Victoria, and then at the top Harper. Anything between
Island?
Yes,
Harper
Well,
and Princeton too?
There's a,
Not much of them.
if I may, there's a collector between Harper and David. There's also Princeton, Burke Village Promenade to the south, and Gislason.
So David and 3 to the south will connect,
That's correct.
and only Harper to the north.
There's also a collector between Harper and David. It's going to connect to the west, yeah.
Okay. So I know when we discussed this, how far up Coast Meridian should be 4-lane, I think Councillor Hodge was talking quite strongly about having go 4 lanes to Highland.
No, Princeton.
Princeton?
Princeton, we're talking at least, that's
Because of
first,
the Hazel Drive, maybe.
that's the first collector.
Oh, no, that's good. No, it's already 4-lane to David now. Princeton south of David.
No,
No, Princeton.
Princeton's north of Dave.
Oh, sorry.
Princeton's north of Dave.
Oh, on this map it's south.
Isn't that weird?
But this is Partington Creek.
Yes.
Yes, I know. Does it
crosses
cross over?
over-
Did Princeton?
crosses over at the
Oh,
fire hall.
Princeton did
Cross-
cross.
it's crosses
Oh,
over.
okay, never mind. All right. Okay, sorry. I was just getting it. Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to clarify this. Thank you. That
Okay.
modifies it.
Councilor Sikora.
Thank you very much. Explain to me this 2.9. What, you know, it's
Oh,
not
that's what
three,
crosses
it's
right
not
there.
two, there's a family, a couple living with a midget or something?
It's called an average, Lou.
Is that what it is?
It's called an average. Some have two, some have three, some have four.
How much is it possible to come up with 2.9?
Well, unless a bunch had 3 and some had 2.
Yeah, so how can it be 2.9 then?
Well, you
Some have three
you
and
have
some
a
have
1,
two.
3, and 10 twos, and it's 2.9. 3 plus 9 times 2 divided by 2.9.
No, I'm not gonna go any further, but I
Yeah,
think
but you want to put the hypotenuse over the reciprocal.
really reaching 2.9.
The challenge would be, if you rounded it up or rounded it down to a whole number, you'd probably be introducing more error. Right? If you made it an even 3, and you times that times 10,000 units, you might be overstating. If you rounded it down to 2, you might be understating. So it obviously doesn't make sense when you're looking at families, but statistically and for planning purposes, it's kind of
Planners, people at the last point.
not just planners, too, engineers as well.
It could be very complicated for the average citizen, but for the planning department, it's not.
They're smart, these guys.
And engineers.
Doesn't make sense to the general public, but makes sense in the planning department.
Close to 3.
Okay, thank you.
Well, that's what averages do. Okay. Anybody else? Seeing none? Motion's on the floor to receive. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 5 is a report of General Manager, Engineering and Public Works related to a proposed bylaw and enhanced management strategy to address erosion and sediment control issues in the city of Coquitlam. We have introductory comments by our Manager of Engineering and Public Works and a presentation by our Manager of Environmental Services.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. This is our check-in moment prior to introduction of any formal bylaw changes. A few of the things that I want to emphasize about this work is that the approach allows for more proactive enforcement rather than reactive and having to go to labs, etc. It does streamline regulations, it consolidates bylaws, but also making them more robust. What we heard from the UDI and the builders and the developers is that they want to have a level playing field. They know that there is a spectrum of very good players and others who have looser practices, and so they're looking for a more level playing field. This is not just about focusing on sites and erosion and sediment. This is also a body of work that protects your overall drainage system. And with that, I'll leave it to Stephanie.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just going to start with a little bit of background. Over the past few years, we've seen a substantial amount of development and redevelopment activity across the city. And with this, there's been an increasing number of problem sites coming to our attention and raising concern by DFO, MOE, our development community, residents, and yourselves on council. In an effort to help address some of this, in 2011, we increased our field presence and enforcement activity through the creation of our new environmental services and worksite bylaw position. And we have seen some positive outcomes from this effort. However, through 2012, there did still continue to be a number of issues with a fairly substantial incident occurring in late 2012. So around that time, the city did commission an independent review, and a consultant's report was brought before council that identified a need for the city to develop an enhanced erosion and sediment control management strategy that would include more stringent requirements and a stronger regulatory process to address these sorts of issues. Since that time, starting in this year, staff has been working on the enhanced ESC management strategy, which has included developing bylaw amendments, some stakeholder consultation, and looking at our staff resources and training and our overall customer service. So just as a reminder, here's some photos that we have taken out in the field showing examples of things that we don't want to see on our construction sites. By contrast, some photos of the sorts of things we do want to see. So to this end, we have started tackling the most significant portion of our enhanced erosion and sediment control and management strategy, which is our regulatory framework. And the recommendation was for an erosion and sediment control focused bylaw. The city does have requirements currently in place for developers, but these requirements are primarily through policies and procedures and guidelines that are associated with the building and subdivision approval process. We have existing bylaws, the stream and drainage system protection bylaw and our sediment control bylaw. They help, but we are finding them to be very reactionary in nature and also somewhat outdated. As we've been looking at this, we considered, whether we amend those bylaws or we create a standalone erosion and sediment control bylaw. We did a bunch of research, and what we came to was we feel it is the best approach to put forward a consolidated regulatory framework that would replace our existing bylaws and improve on these, allowing for us to have improved proactive enforcement options, but also allowing us to look at the drainage system as a whole and protection of the drainage system as a whole, not just erosion and sediment control issues. So that's what we are going to be presenting today. The goals of the proposed bylaw are to raise developer, builder, contractor accountability and compliance. We want to maintain a regulatory model that is not permit-based and still allows for reliance on industry and oversight by qualified professionals. We want to help level the playing field for developers and their qualified professionals by providing a set of clear standards, regulatory requirements, and expectations that are understood by all, and allowing us to have a proactive and effective approach to encouraging site design and site control. And lastly, allowing the city to have a broader range of enforcement tools and strategies to encourage compliance. So with our proposed bylaw, which as I said earlier is going to replace two existing bylaws, there are components of the existing bylaws that do carry over related to the overall system protection. But in addition, to help address the erosion and sediment control issues, we are proposing new discharge criteria, some enhanced administrative requirements. There will be new fees and security requirements, enhanced monitoring and reporting requirements, and a wider range of enforcement options. So my next few slides, I'm going to go through these in a little bit more detail. So for the new discharge criteria, the current bylaws that we have rely on 75 milligrams per liter total suspended solids above background as the measurable criteria. We are proposing to move away from 75 TSS and go towards using turbidity with the limits of 25 NTU under normal conditions and allowing for 100 NTU under those significant rainfall conditions. And having that measurement at the point of discharge. So the benefits of this approach are we would be allowing for a real-time measurement as the sediment-laden water is leaving the site. So we remove the hassle and difficulty of trying to establish an appropriate above background condition. This also encourages developers to consider all the influences to their site at the time that they're designing the controls for the site. And going to NTU, turbidity, it's readily measured in the site using a handheld meter. So with the TSS, that requires collecting a sample, sending to a lab, waiting however many days to get the result back, using turbidity right then in the moment, take the measurement, know exactly what's coming off that site, and appropriate action can be taken not only by ourselves but by the developers and their qualified professionals. And just to note, these criteria are the same as what's being used currently in Langley Township and City of Abbotsford. Under new administrative requirements, currently for single-family and duplex developments, we don't have anything for requiring erosion sediment control formally. What we're proposing now is a very simple, what we call ESC submission form, which contains minimum best management standards that we as a city expect for all sites, and requires that the developer at the time that prior to their being given their permit would show us that they've read that, signed off on it, and declare that they will implement and follow accordingly. So that's for the smaller sites. When we get into the larger sites, larger than duplex, we have quite a few more administrative requirements. We have a similar ESC submission form compelling the use of minimum best management standards. As well, that form we have a sign-off declaration by both the developer and their ESC supervisor, who is the person that will be overseeing the site in compliance with the new bylaw. To that end, the bylaw does require that the larger developers retain an ESC supervisor for the site, and our bylaw goes further as to identify the role, responsibility, and qualifications for that person, which includes giving that person the authority to halt work to help ensure compliance with the bylaw on behalf of the developer who they're working for. We have requirements for an erosion sediment control plan. That is a requirement currently, but our bylaw formalizes the requirement, formalizes the details and the quality of the plan, includes the minimum monitoring maintenance requirements for the plan, and under the new bylaw we include a requirement that that plan be signed off by the ESC supervisor. To close that loop, the ESC supervisor is the one who will be implementing it, and require approval by the city for that plan. Again, currently doing it, but informally. The new bylaw has minimum inspection, monitoring, and reporting requirements, all to be overseen by the ESC supervisor. And what we've gone further to do with inspections is we are requiring a daily inspection by on-site personnel, as well as advanced inspection preceding a significant rainfall event. So again, this is meant to be proactive measures and to compel developers and the people working for them on these sites to know what's in place on the site and what's necessary to ensure that the bylaw is complied with. We've included a requirement for a pre-construction meeting with city staff, the developer, and the ESC supervisor. Again, this isn't new. This is happening currently, but it's informal. Now we're just formalizing that requirement. Another new requirement is for site signage, and the idea here is that a sign would be posted by the developer identifying the ESC facilities and best management practices that are in place at the site, with contact information for their ESC supervisor and the city. Fees and security requirements. We are proposing for single-family and duplex developments to increase their current fee from $75 to $200. This is their inspection and administration fee. And this is to cover off the additional administration, inspections, and follow-up work that we anticipate for these size of developments. For all other developments, the larger sites, we don't have any changes to their administration and inspection fees. However, security deposits, currently we require 110% of the estimated cost of the ESC facilities. So that stays, but we are adding that cost estimate should include the cost for monitoring those works. So the idea being if the city has to take over, we would also be taking over the monitoring requirement, and currently we're not including that in the securities. What's also new is security deposit 110% or $5,000, whichever is greater. So basically we're asking for a minimum $5,000 security. Under enforcement, as I stated previously, our current provisions are fairly reactionary. We're limited to the definition of prohibited discharge under our current bylaws, likely or real, and 75 milligram TSS above background, as I stated earlier. We do issue warnings, tickets, stop work orders for those extreme cases, but that's sort of where we're limited. So in the proposed strategy, we're looking to improve our ability to work with the developers and take action when we need to throughout the entire process. So things like failing to submit the plans, the forms, failing to install what we consider to be minimum best management practices, failing to have an approved ESC plan, failure to have and retain an ESC supervisor, things like this that are all necessary steps that we should be encouraging and enforcing before anything ever happens. We are giving ourselves the ability to do that through the new bylaw process. And then added to that, we are proposing to increase the penalties. Currently they're $250 for a ticket. We're looking to increase those to $500 per ticket, which would be more consistent with other environmental bylaw enforcement that we have in the city. So that's the main bylaw portion of the enhanced ESC management strategy. It's the biggest body of work coming out of the strategy. Other components of the strategy that were identified in the earlier consultants report include stakeholder consultation. We have done some of that leading up to this presentation today. We brought the overall proposal to the UDI on June 6th, and we received general acceptance to the approach from the folks attending that meeting. We also took a draft of the actual bylaw to the Sustainability and Environmental Advisory Committee on June 20th. They were also well receiving of the proposal, but they did include a recommendation that we expand our outreach to the general public, not just limited to the development community. We're also looking at staffing, resources, and training to support our strategy. Part of that is defining and redefining roles and responsibilities between our various city departments, because this is a whole strategy various staff and departments are involved with along the way. We are looking at provisions for, and actually I've even started with some additional training for all staff who are involved in this work. And then along with the enhanced strategy, there is inevitably a bit of a need for some enhanced resourcing. We are estimating currently the need for one additional full-time position, most likely in the Environmental Services Division, to assist with that on the ground in the field presence. We do intend to bring further details forward as part of the budgeting process on that point. And lastly, our overall customer service. We want to ensure that the city is providing the best customer service possible to support the community in achieving our enhanced strategy. So we have worked on a number of forms, templates, supporting documentation to go along with our new bylaw, and we will be making those improvements and additions to our website so that all the resources and tools that we can possibly think of will be available to assist developers as they work through our process. Next steps, we're planning to come before you on July 29th for first, second, and third reading of the proposed bylaw, and anticipating, if that is successful, that we would be bringing forward fourth reading in September. Between now and that time, we also have to consider concurrent amendments to the various supporting bylaws, so development servicing, fees and charges, etc. Also between now and then, working on finalizing all of our forms, templates, and working on the updates to the city's website. And as an ongoing initiative, education and outreach to not only the development community and the public, but also internally with our own staff. And that is it.
Thank you very much.
One question.
I've got a bunch myself. This one I've been waiting for. I thank you very much. This is one of those areas where we need the development industry's support, but we also need them to understand that we mean business. I think the bylaw now makes it clear that we mean business. We intend to level the playing field. We have to slope the site, but the playing field will be level, and we want to tell all of the development industry, the good ones, that the playing field is now level. We want to tell the incompetent ones, the negligent ones, that they either up their game or they go play on someone else's field. This is the stuff we saw from one, in particular, one site last fall was egregious. It was incompetence at its finest. And I think we need to, so I'm a little bit concerned about the fines. I mean, I look at the BOZAs right across the street. We've got a crew that is doing everything, and they've got the roads so tidy in spite of the fact that they've removed many truckloads of filth. They know what they're doing. Westfield, they know what they're doing. Polygon, I don't want to go down and name them, but there are some really good companies that are doing business in Coquitlam, and they need to be treated. We need to make it not more expensive to do the right thing, but less expensive to do the right thing. And so how do we get the fines higher than $500 for discharge of a deleterious, for example, which is clearly that there are some developers who won't take that one seriously.
Your Worship, I'll do an initial comment and then ask Stephanie to comment as well. There is definitely a graduating scenario for increased fines. The $500 is a per day, per individual occurrence. So each and every day that you're out of compliance, that $500 would apply. There is another, and I believe that that's under the sort of short form BEN system, which, right, and you can only go so high with that system. Now you can then kick it up a notch, and you can then engage the MTI system up to a maximum of $2,000. And if it is in fact still an egregious issue, you can proceed with a court prosecution and under the Offense Act, and upwards of $10,000 applies in that case. So there are various processes, and the one that we're amending just now is the BEN process. Yeah.
Okay, and I appreciate that. I think ultimately, as we did last fall, the bigger penalty may well just be shutting them down until they either learn from their mistake or hand the site over to someone who can do it. I've also got everybody practically. Councillor O'Neill, Councillor Asmussen, Councillor Sikora, Councillor Reid. Councillor O'Neill.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think great presentation. The public wants this. I see the UDI is on board. I know that we hear about this sort of stuff from the voters all the time, so it's work that is much appreciated. I'm concerned, well, I have questions about a few things. Financial implications. you talked about the likely need for an additional person. In the report, it talks about ongoing costs of $150,000 a year, which could be accommodated via a combination of drainage utility with some costs recovered through fees and charges. All costs will be further assessed and details provided as part of the budget. I would really hope that this is one of these net zero things where we actually aren't having to look at adding some points to the tax base on this one, that we will find a way to fund it out of existing program expenditures and also through fees and charges as well. This could become pretty expensive, and so I'd really urge everyone involved in this to make it a net zero. Is that the right word, Ms. McLeod? Net zero? Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Great expression. Thank you. And speaking of financial implications, it is noted there will be a slight increase in fees, and then it goes on to talk about a 166% increase in fee. But I think what you mean is a slight increase in the overall collection, total of collection. So it's not for the single and the duplex. It's probably not a lot of those. So it may be go from 10 to 12,000. But the point I want to make is that for the individual homeowner who's facing a lot of different hoops to jump through, as we heard earlier today, to get a home built. This is a 166% increase in the fee, 2.5 times bigger. It's not slight, it's another brick in that wall, a wall built to keep affordable housing affordability away from people, right? So we want to be very, very careful here. I don't know if there's a way that you can foresee before the bylaw is finalized to have less than 166% increase for that person who just wants to build a house, facing a lot of other fees, a lot of other licenses and things like this. Is this one written in stone already, or can this be adjusted? If it's only a minor thing anyway, let's be on the side of the little guy here.
Just a comment, if I could, Your Worship. I'm not sure how intimately tied this bylaw, which sets standards and expectations, is to, with the fees and charges bylaw. I think all of the money aspects of this bylaw, if they rest in the fees and charges bylaw, and if that's coming later, then that'll give us some time to think this through over the next couple of months. What should the funding source be? So I think the prime reason for us coming to you at this stage is, have we got the approach right, the standards right, and what have you. I guess the one question I have for staff is in the detail of this particular drainage bylaw, do we actually reference fees, or is fees all a part of another bylaw?
The fees will be set through the corresponding amendment to the fees and charges bylaw. The proposed bylaw does reference that bylaw and does references the bylaw. I just to address your comment a little bit, we did think quite a bit about that fee. One of the challenges that we are struggling with, dealing with, looking to address, is currently for those smaller lots, we don't have a lot in the way of standards to help address this issue, but we see a lot of the issues coming from these types of lots, possibly for that reason. So with the bigger lots, there are a lot of cost or higher cost items with having to retain qualified professionals, et cetera, et cetera. We don't require that for these smaller developments. What we have done as staff is propose or through the bylaw, through what we've put forward today, minimum best management practices. But we're looking for an accountability loop, something to close that circle with the smaller sites. And so we came up with a bit of an administrative task that allows us the opportunity to have that conversation, to create that accountability. But there is work that is involved with that for us as staff. In addition, when we're out there and having to deal with the issues that are arising on those sites, although they may not be as grandiose as we see with some of the bigger sites, they're collective. So we need some additional accounting for our role as staff in helping to address with the smaller sites.
Has there ever been any consideration given both to the single duplex development and the larger ones to some sort of deposit that gets put in place where that's related to the amount of trouble that that site causes?
Well,
where if the site goes through, everything is fine, and they've really done a great job, they'll get a chunk of that back, and if there's been a big problem, we get to keep it.
So with the larger sites, we do have that. We have the security deposit with the calculation that I explained earlier. We don't require that for the smaller sites. Again, trying to sort of balance that financial piece a little bit. The challenge with the security deposit, though, is that we do give it back. So when we're endeavoring to account for our resources, if we're giving it back, we're not accounting for our resources or the resources that are needed. So it's that sort of balance.
Okay. I'm not necessarily agreeing with it, but I understand the rationale. Thank you.
Well, I'm very impressed. I like the report. I've been involved with this through staff, talking about changes to this for probably about 3 years now. We've had some issues over the last number of years from small. A lot of big major developers have made major failures in keeping up with standards. Part of the problem, I think, was a lack of clarity, a lack of, on our part, and some of their part, on the regulations. And I think what this does, this bylaw, from the consultant's report, which we've taken, is it set out a greater, clear accountability, clearer set of standards for everybody to follow. I like the fact that the fines are going to the owner-developer, because I think they're the ones that are responsible and control that site. If their contractors they hired are getting fined or making a mistake, it's their responsibility. They can claw back if they want, but it puts the onus on them, and I think that's a good start. I think we've been trying to run around from time to time, so everybody's pointing the finger. It's not me, it's them, it's not me. We just clarified, this fine goes to you. You sort down your responsibilities, and I think that helps staff a lot. The other thing I want to point out, when we did our consultant's report, we looked at the cities out there, and I think, as you point out, this models Abbotsford Langley's bylaw, but I think Abbotsford on that report about a medium to low, we're a high for our siltation, drainage, discharge, and issues due to our rainfall and everything else. So I think it's more critical for us to invest in this because we have a higher degree of probability of problems just because of the rainfall and the slopes and things we're dealing with. So that I'm glad to see that part in here because I think we're addressing some of those issues. We've had issues in the spring, summer where nice weather, and when you said about pre-meetings prior to rainfall, where people sort of said, well, we don't have to do all that stuff. And we get those sudden, huge, where we've had these, some of the bigger ones been in the spring, summer, we've had some terrible siltation problems. So I like that pre-meeting part of it. I think when it comes to, we only have two ways to fund staff to the extra work that's going to be involved. Either you raise a point on taxes or you raise fees to the people applying and doing the development. So I think the fees are a good way. It keeps us from raising taxes. We only have two areas to go. I think the $75 up to $200 is a fair charge. I think on a small developer would rather pay a $200 fee than putting out a $5,000 bond. I think it's easier for them, and it's not as a big financial. I think it's for them that's simpler at the smaller scale. So I think that works. But I think you guys have done a tremendous job. I've read this through a number of times, and I think this is going to get us where we need to be for all the players, for ourselves, the developers, the environmental consultants, and our people on the ground will have a clearer understanding and commitments. I looked at the forms. We've got a lot of sign-off forms here that, like I said, clarifies a lot of the responsibilities and the rules in here. So I think as UDI is on board with this, they see the need for it, they understand it, and I think from their point of view, it helps bring that clarity to them because these problems have been ranging from little guys to the largest developers we have throughout the city, making problems for us. So it's a good job. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. This brings a whole lot of questions that I have. You know, to me, the way you talked about, you mentioned staff training, and then you mentioned staff, that looks like another layer of government. You know, you mentioned one person, but it's not, it's a lot more than one person. One person is not going to be able to do what you're asking them to do. There's just no way. So, you know, to me, I have a great problem. You know, when something happened last fall, where there's some developer that did a very, very poor job and went overboard, and you had actually excessive rain last fall or last year. Now what we're trying to do is take a sledgehammer to kill a fly. That's what we're doing. And we're going to put another layer of bureaucracy in place. And I'm totally opposed. I know that we got to control certain things, but I'm totally opposed to another layer of bureaucracy. We seem to be, everything we do is more government, more government, more government. We should be going into a lot less government, staying away from all the things, you know, that we're trying to do. We're never ever going to be able to manage the city, you know, with bureaucracy. It just is not going to work. Now, so you know, it's going to slow up a lot of things. Probably tickets, no matter from $75 to $250, from $250 to $500, and really not a good enough reason why. Because the going rate. That's the only reason. Because the going rate. What is it? I mean, why? Go ahead.
Yeah, sure, Your Worship. It's the principle is cost recovery. Development pays for development is the general principle that we're operating under. But we've also heard concerns about not to pluck too much of that, and also try not to pluck whatsoever, if you will, from the general taxpayer. So we've got a bit of homework to do. In terms of bureaucracy and staff, my comment is just that there needs to be continuous learning of the resources that are already on the ground. The city has engineering inspectors, public works inspectors, building inspectors, plumbing inspectors, not just, environmental looking at sediment inspectors. We only have one of those, if you will, and they certainly can't do the entire job. But the entire city force that is available to at least observe and send messages that's what by staff training means, and that's just simply sensitivity and ensuring that we're working as the most efficient and effective overall team as possible, because we do have resources that we can effectively deploy. Just one further thought is you as the council are probably owed a status report once there are some months gone by, and what I would suggest and could I think reasonably commit is that probably before the Christmas break or something like that, I would suggest that there would be a status update and how this is working in terms of acceptability by the developers, acceptability by the building permit holders, and is this working out? So I think that feedback would occur to report back on some of the issues that have been expressed.
Okay, now you're talking about cost recovery. Okay, cost recovery. What happens if you have a whole bunch of surpluses in there? Do you return it back to the developer or the owner? Is that what you're planning to do, or is that going to go to general revenue again? What's going to happen?
I think what you're saying is where is the money for the fees going and the money for the fee? I would have to defer to Sheena, but essentially it would be a general revenue type of income that would have to rest in some department, and presumably it would have to rest within the Environmental Services Department. But overall, it would be a general revenue type of line item.
The fact is, I'd like to see a different fund put up, another fund put up in the Treasury for this, and if there's an overcharge, and your tickets are going from $75 to $250, from $250 to $500, if there's a great big pocket of money in there that you haven't spent, I'd like to see it going back to the developer or the builder, whoever it is. rather than another one in general revenue. The provincial government and federal government are very, very famous. They have everything going to general revenue. For instance, the tolls for Portland Bridge and the tolls for any other bridge, where do they go? To general revenue. They don't go to highways.
We can certainly monitor that on an annual basis, and that if our revenues are in excess of our costs, we can take that into account in terms of adjusting and potentially reducing fees in future years. I mean, that's something that we can do in an ongoing way.
You'll never know if the money goes into general revenue. How are you going to?
Well, we would do an ongoing review, and if we really wanted to, I mean, we could set up a dedicated reserve, and it would be part of the drainage reserve. You have many reserves in there, but the more reserves you have, the more complicated you make it, and the more orphan funds you have. And so generally, I would favor more simply looking at it once a year and looking to make sure our fees are appropriate in accordance with our costs. And if they're high or low, you can adjust them. And over time, you'll make sure you're in the right ballpark.
Right now, the building permits, for example, are, I guess I'll look to the department. Building permits is a fund that has to be self-funded. I mean, it's the building inspections are funded out of building permit fees. Are fees typically set to recover the costs of building permits, and development fees set to recover the cost of development purpose and such? Mr. McIntyre.
Your Worship, yeah, that is the basic principle, coming out of the legislation, is that we set fees. We can't obviously be overcharging and have like a cash cow if the costs are way out of line. So we try to keep that balance. I think specific to this area, and maybe again Sheena can better speak to this, because this isn't the first effort to expand our resources in this area. So there was some fees that were added on, I believe a year or so ago. And what it tries to do is, at the building permit stage, is create some extra funding that can then go over and support positions being hired. So, and then it becomes a net zero increase. But
yeah. When we create a new kind of a fee or we raise a fee, it goes into a specific account in our general ledger. We can tell exactly what that fee is for and what we charged it for, and we can trace that right back to the Amanda system. So if we have a particular fee and it starts to recover way more than we ever anticipated, we will know that. That's not difficult for us to find out. And part of our process when we go to do the next budget is we look at all of those things that were supposed to be net neutral, that would sort of be a revenue that created room to have another employee to go out and raise tickets or whatever they're going to do, and we check to make sure that those kind of are in balance. As a matter of fact, we're just going through that process right now for the stuff that was approved last year. So we'd know that. It's very clear to see.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I hadn't said very much because I had the privilege of sitting through a long discussion about this at the Sustainability and Environment Advisory Committee. But the one point I'd like to make is, without suggesting for a moment that we've already decided to hire one more staff person, the fact that we're able to target a much higher level of compliance, a desired level of compliance, with a relatively low expenditure of additional resources, I think is because as all these problems were arising, staff was doing a great job of getting more and more of all the people that we already have on the ground be attentive to problems. If you see some mud running down the street, don't say, well, I'm not sweeping streets today, so I'll just drive by, but to contact the appropriate person and see if they can find out where the mud's coming from, and even more important, where it's going. How to stop it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Is there a motion yet?
Second.
Motion received. Seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much.
Councillor Reid did have another business item related to the above all signs.
Yes. So, coming down Guilford from my house today, I see these pretty hot pink signs and red signs, and I'm trying to read them, and then I realize they're backwards. So if you're coming from west to east, you have to read backwards, which when you haven't slept all night is a little difficult. But there's two sides. So I'm wondering why staff wouldn't put up one with you can read above all this way and one that you can read above all that way instead of not being able to read them at all going east.
That's a good question, and we noticed that. And there were changes that are going to be made in that, as well as one of the colors that you can't read at all, that in the planning stage looked marvelous on a planning docket, but looked really bad once it was out.
Welcome home would look good too.
So, so both of
When
those.
you're heading east, right?
That's right. So both of those will be taken care of, and the one that's not working right now is the yellow one, so it will be replaced with a color that does work.
It just looked kind of funny, and I thought, well, why couldn't they just flip it around? And yeah. Okay, that was it.
That's good. Thank you.
Bring in some paintbrushes and a banner, and council will do it.
We'll get you a lift truck.
Speak
Come
for
on.
yourself.
Thank you.
You're good with that?
Yeah. Just
Outstanding. Thank you very much. Motion to adjourn from Councillor Nicholson, seconded by Councillor Rasmussen. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. 5 minutes.